Someone said to me on the comment section, and one of the comments, oh, how do you know, that these details of these celebrities that you use are correct? How can you verify that these people were born on the days that the media says they were born in, right? And of course, Beyoncé being in one of these topics, her name, that is, when it comes to birthdays and birth years and all of that, right? So I wanted to show you guys when to use Moss to look at the husband or to figure out the love life about the person regarding to the husband or to the spouse, and when to use Jupiter. Okay, you can use both, it will give good results, no problem. And you can also use Mars at certain times and use Jupiter at certain times. So let's get into the details. Let me show you quickly how it's done. But before I do, I just want to give reverence to my a father who passed away last week and was put to his rest yesterday. I want to say, may his soul rest in peace. I love him dearly, and I thank God and the planets and Yahweh for him being in my life. So now let's get into the details. We are going to use Jupiter in Vedic perspective, like in Vedic astrology. We're also going to use Jupiter when we are looking at tropical astrology, but tropical astrology tends to lean towards the Nandi, where we use the Mars as the significator of husband, of spouse in a woman's chart, right? But as you guys know, that for me it's not about any type of a system. I really don't care about which type of a system I use, what works. I literally look at all the systems and do the research and compare using data, compare using charts, and this is how I get to see which methods work best and when they work best. All right. So we're going to use Jupiter at any time when you are using the Vedic system, but I urge you to not use it alone. Always refer to Mars. There's a love lover who asked me another time what I believed in. Did I believe in Mars or in Jupiter? And I had explained, it was at the beginning of this year, I had explained that in my perspective, Mars represents the dating part, the boyfriend stages, like people that you don't have long-term commitments with, people that you don't get to have children with, right? And when it comes to Jupiter, then I look at when you're married, I look at the serious relationships, and I look at any relationship that produced a child, because a child is a form of commitment, therefore it can be equal to marriage, right? So this is how I look at it when I am using the Vedic system, so to speak. But always, as you guys know, I mix, I open myself up to different types of methods, because some methods offer things that the other ones don't. For example, the tropical side does not necessarily focus on, the Mahadashas, the book teas, those type of details. They don't use that, they don't follow that, and most of the people don't even know about the existence of these things, right? Similarly, many sidereal or Easterners don't use Pluto, Uranus, Neptune as Chiron, Lilith. They don't look at them as important, even though, theory proves that they are important, right? So if then, we have to limit ourselves in a certain methodology and not open up ourselves to other methods, then our knowledge will not advance, and we will not advance in our techniques and methodologies as well, right? With that said, every time, for those who are strictly using Vedic, it is wisely to use your Jupiter with Mars. Use your Jupiter, but also look at what Mars is telling you. Why is that? Now let me tell you the reasons behind this advice, right? Mars represents, the passion, the sexual side of the relationship, the energy that is given into the relationship, right? And we also look at the actions that, the partner does towards the relationship. But most of all, from the Vedic point of view, the Mars will show places of problems, conflicts, all of that arguments, right? And as well as when the relationship will break, how it will break, all of that, right? But when you look at Jupiter, then you can see the moral side of the husband, the spouse. You can see the wisdom, the spirituality side of it, right? But now let's say that you're not using Vedic. Let's say now you are using Nadi, right? We know, for example, one of our favorite YouTubers, Kapil, he's using Nadi, right? Of course, he also has his course, with his school and all of that, right? So you can use Mars, obviously, when you are following his method of Nadi, right? Because then what Nadi does, it assigns the characteristics and what the person is doing to the planet, right? Whereas in Vedic is the vice versa. They take the planet and give and place it to different activities, different actions, different characteristics, right? So that's the difference, really, right? So basically the 1990 system, it does not consider the spiritual side, the wisdom side of the husband. It really doesn't care about that. It's looking at the physical aspects of, or the physical results of the husband, what they're doing, how they behave, where they stay, and all of that, right? So then, in terms of when you don't know the birth time, when you don't know the birth year, because that's the problem that people are having. That's the main issue that people are making comments about when it comes to Beyonce's chart. That her declared birth year is not her birth year, right? There's all those conspiracy theories, right, regarding her birth year. So in her case, then we would not need to look at the year. Why? Because if we focused on the year, then we would fall into looking at Jupiter in a certain way. We would say maybe Jupiter was in Aries or whatever, whereas in case, it could have been in whatever else sign, right? But as we know, Mama Tina doesn't play with her children. Mama Tina came out and said, hey, you stop it, right? I know when I gave birth to Beyoncé, right? So don't play with that. But, to look at the conspiracy theorists, and then with their conspiracy theory, then we would make a mistake if we focus too much on Jupiter, right? Instead of, the Mars, right? So this is when you would need to use Mars when you do not know the birth year of the person. Why? Because Mars is mostly moving at the same sign at a certain time, mostly, right? We do know this retrogrades, right? All of that. So if you are an advanced astrologer or an advanced researcher like myself in terms of techniques, then you would calculate the retrograde. You would use your calculations to also account for possible retrogrades, right? So figure out the month. So because it's a monthly based thing, then it is always safe to use Mars regardless of your designated method, whether you use Vedic, whether you use Nadi, whether you're using Western, all of that. When it comes to Mars, you will hardly be incorrect. But of course, then there's a debate of science, because then, the Westerners, they're going to have a certain sign, whereas the Easterners are going to have another sign, right? Most of the time. Sometimes it falls in the same sign, but most of the time it differs, right? One would be saying this one is Capricorn, and then the other one would be like, hold on, it's actually in Aquarius, right? But the main tip or the main advice that I'm giving you guys is to focus on Mars regardless of your technique or method or methodology or school or belief. If you do not know the birth year. Now, for example, let's look at Beyonce's chart, and of course I'm only pulling up the Jupiter and the Mars to show the examples, like we don't look at the rest of the chart. When it comes to Jupiter, right, then we can see that her Jupiter is on her ascendant because she's a Virgo, right? She's got the song Virgo Groove because she's really a Virgo. So she's got that Jupiter with Pluto, Saturn, with Venus, Mercury, all on her ascendant, very busy ascendant, right? So when it comes to this, then we would say that Jay-Z, the husband, is detail orientated. We would be like, he's analytical, because it's in Virgo, right? The Jupiter. We would talk about how that he has high moral values in life, like he wants to make good things, he wants to make the right things for people, he likes to help people, he likes to be in service to other people. He's all about his health, he's health focused. He's going to the gym, he wants to look healthy, he wants to be healthy. He's a workaholic. And these are the definitions that we would talk about, Jay-Z based on this Jupiter, right? And then, of course, because it's with other planets, then we would, further talk about Jay-Z and say, he's very intelligent. We would talk about his adaptability, about that he's got practical communication, And we just talking about how he's got the reasoning skills, like he can reason, and he's just adapting to relationships. He's easy to adapt, all of that, like relationships and his work. And of course, because this Jupiter is with what? With Venus, we would further say, oh my God, the husband is beautiful, very beautiful man, who loves art, who's all about harmony, who's all about diplomacy, trying to find balance in his relationships, all of that, right? We would talk about how he's very loyal and grounded and all of that, like refined due to the Venus factor, right? And then of course, because there's Saturn as well in that mix, we would talk about how responsible he is. We would talk about how practical he is, that he's a grounded man, very dependable man, very stable, and in relationships, just like wanting to focus on one relationship, doesn't cheat. This would be the Jay-Z if we're looking at the Jupiter, right? And of course, because there's a Pluto, we even go deeper, right? Talking about how resilient he is in terms of crisis, and of course he's facing transformations. He's all about introspections and all of that, right? So of course, because we know that Jay-Z talked about his history and how he's actually the opposite of what this Jupiter is describing, because Jay-Z told us that he didn't have morals, that he was like selling drugs even to his own mother, I think, or something like that, and that he did something to his brother, I don't know, something like that, right? Basically, he told us that he's actually the opposite of what is being described by this Jupiter in Virgo when it comes to, Beyoncé. So, of course, we can see that based on Jay-Z's history and Jay-Z's story from himself, this does not match. This Jupiter doesn't match at all. So then let's go into Mars. Looking at Mars, right, then of course we're going to say it's in Cancer, debilitated, of course, which means of course it's weakened, right? So what it suggests from the Nadi's perspective, we're going to say the husband is deeply emotional. We're going to say because of the emotions, maybe he could struggle to express himself, and to take decisions like in a practical manner. So the decisions are usually taken based on emotions. Of course, we're going to say he's protective, he's nurturing, and he's got those qualities that are described by the moon, meaning that a bit moody, inconsistent here and there, obviously influenced by emotions. If he's not feeling you today, then he's going to act according to that. If he's feeling you tomorrow, then act according to that, right? And we would obviously say he's a caring man, he's a caring husband, and he's also prone to, let's say, being vulnerable and easily irritated because of the emotional state of Cancer, right? Then, because it's with Rahu, we're going to add, those qualities of Rahu, such as, ambition. We're gonna say he's very ambitious. He's always like desiring to achieve big goals, and it can be hyper active because Mars action, right? Then you add Rahu, then that's gonna be expanded to the highest, right? Then of course we're going to say because it's in the 11th house, then these ambitions are regarding gains, networking, controlling the network, his network or their network, which is like what Hollywood, right? So all of that entertainment industry, right? And because of that Rahu, again, he could be appearing to be very dynamic, outwardly very sure of himself, but could be facing a whole lot of emotional turmoil due to the Mars in Cancer, right? And because we know that Rahu gives, that mind of looking at different ways to solve our problems, looking at different maneuvers to achieve something. So he could be also prone, to using unconventional methods or even extreme methods to make sure that he achieves his success, and obviously meeting that energy that Rahu is giving, right? That oomph that I want this, I have to get it, right? And because this is a social circle of the 11th house, we're talking about finances, we're talking about networks, friends and all of that, right? We could see a whole big instability when it comes to these things, like an unpredictable nature of the husband, of how he's behaving, in these areas. Like people can't really get him, they can't really see, him coming. They can't really tell what he's thinking about, what he's planning, right? Because of that illusion of Rahu covering his actions, right? And even regarding, his desires, people are not sure what he's gonna do next, to achieve those desires, right? So overall, from the 1990s perspective, we would describe Jay-Z, her husband, as ambitious, emotionally complex. We would say he's highly driven, to succeed, of course. And because of the Rahu, then there could be some cover of what he's doing, like he's trying to cover what he's doing, or people don't really understand what he's doing or how he's doing it, how he's achieving his success. So there's a camouflage type of a thing, because that's what Rahu does, right? But at the same time, they see the passion, they see the protectiveness of him over her, but at the same time they see, the mood swings, the emotions running high, and the conflicts and all of that, right? So that would be the Nadi perspective using the Mars. Now let's say you are using the Vedic or n'importe quoi, right? Because remember, when you're using the Vedic, most people, they focus on Jupiter, but because you're not sure about the year, and I already showed you why, it would not work out based on his books and his interviews and what he said about his life, right? So from the perspective of Vedic, looking at Mars alone, we would talk about, how he expresses his strength, through his emotions, through his state of being protective, nurturing, all of that, right? But we would not talk about the physical dominance within the sphere of the 11th house, within the social circles. We would miss that part. We would miss, that vibe, right? Because then at that point we would depend for it from the Jupiter, right? That's how we do. But because of the sign, we can go and say he's caring, he's empathic, he could struggle to assert his boundaries, make decisions, all of that, right? So we would obviously talk about how he values family, how he values emotional security, right? Because remember, the Vedic also looks within, also looks at the domains of spirituality, wisdom, moral compass, all of that. So we'll talk about emotional security, how he values his family, personal connections, all of that, right? Looking at the material side of it as well. And then we have to consider the Rahu, right? And then if we consider the Rahu from the Vedic point of view, then we will talk about, aspirations that he's got, all of that, right? So we still get to the same level as the Nadi. We talk about how unconventional his ideas or even, the ambitions themselves are, and how he pursues his success, his unpredictable way, because as Rahu we would talk about non-traditional ways, all of that, right? But we would need to look within. Now we would have to say, there could be some internal conflict that he is facing most of his life. Sometimes something is saying, okay, cut corners here, take shortcuts, do this, right? And then the other mind is saying, but hold on, if I do this, then my family is at risk, and all of that, right? So there would be like that internal conflict with is pushed by the emotions from the Cancer perspective, right? And we would talk about the wealth, the social status and recognition that comes with the 11th house, right? So with that, we would talk about how, even his network is unconventional, like the circle of his friends, they're also unconventional. They're not traditional people like, like your Joe and Tom down the street, right? So we would look at, how within the circle there could be an overindulgence, because remember Rahu, overindulgence, taking, because this is just the head, right? Eating without stopping. So we talk about that. We would talk about possible deceptive individuals that are within his sphere, and possibly himself, because Rahu is with the Mars. So Rahu is defining the husband. So from the Vedic point of view, we would look at the deception. We would look at possible deception of his character or his friends or the circle that he's within, right? Then from the Vedic point of view, we would be forced to look at moon, because it's ruling Cancer. So with the moon, then we would have to get the whole picture to see if Mars is stabilized, strong with Rahu, or is creating problems, right? Because of course, if the moon is weak or afflicted, then the negative part of Rahu, of this combination of Rahu and Mars, would intensify, right? And of course we would see so many things. So that's what I wanted to talk about, guys. Just take the advice, and I'll chat to you soon. Bientôt, ciao.